Sharing movies with my children from my own childhood is one of my great and simple pleasures in life. Thank goodness they usually like the movies I watched with them, even if some of the references don't make sense to them. A few years ago, we watched the Back to the Future trilogy. You know, Marty McFly, Doc Brown, Biff, and of course the flux capacitor. Watching Marty zip back and forth between his present, the past, and the future is just as much fun today as it was in the 80s. While Back to the Future represents the very best of the time travel genre, at least in my opinion. At least in literary fiction, the idea of classic time travel dates back to the 19th century. This idea of a machine moving us through time may be new, but the notion of finding ourselves in a different time is quite ancient, even making multiple appearances in our tradition. One of the best-known examples of time travel in Judaism stars none other than Moses. In this Talmudic legend, Moses is confused about God writing the Torah and attaching crowns to the letters, artistic embellishments that are in every Torah scroll. The Talmud tells us, when Moses ascended on high, he found the Holy One, blessed be God, sitting and tying crowns to these letters of the Torah. And Moses said to God, Master of the universe, why are you attaching these crowns? And God said to him, there's a man who's destined to be born one day in several generations. His name is Akiva. He is going to create mounds and mounds of meaning from these crowns. It is for his sake that the crowns must be added to the letters of the Torah. And so, of course, Moses said to God, Master of the universe, show him to me. And God said to Moses, turn around. And as he did, Moses found himself centuries in the future in Akiva's study hall. Moses went up and sat down, but did not understand a single thing that they were saying. Moses' strength waned. He thought his knowledge was deficient. And when Rabbi Akiva arrived at the discussion of one matter, one of his students asked him, my teacher, from where do you derive this? And Akiva said to them, it's the law transmitted to Moses from Sinai. Now, when Moses heard Akiva say this, his mind was put at ease, as this too was part of the Torah that he was to receive. It's a moving narrative for many reasons, but there is a distinct difference that separates Moses from Marty McFly. Whereas for Marty and so many others, the purpose of time travel is to change some cosmic feature, Moses doesn't seek to change. He seeks to understand, and moreover, it is only when he hears his own name, even though he doesn't understand exactly what's happening in the class, that he does understand Akiva's connection to the past and his own connection to the future. In a sense, Moses and Akiva are time travelers. Moses is always sitting in the back of Akiva's classroom, and Akiva is always learning from Moses. For better or worse, we humans have done an incredible job conquering space. We are able to move around our world by car, plane, train. We can have McDonald's in Ann Arbor or New Delhi. I looked it up. They do have them. Yeah. Any of us right here could reach into our pockets. I don't know, maybe the phone call before was from somebody. Who knows? We could be anywhere in the world, but we could reach into our pockets. We could take out our phones. We could call Chile or Thailand or Kenya. Nearly 20 years ago, Thomas Friedman told us the world is flat. And while COVID has shown us that it is not as flat as we once thought, the world is still much smaller today than it was 50 years ago. For millennia, we've been dreaming of conquering time as well. We have tales of the fountain of youth and, of course, time machines. We have stories of people falling asleep for 20, 30, even 70 years, waking up in the future. We dream of conquering time, but alas, time rules us. It is the truest currency we have and the one most of us work hardest for. And even though we likely will never conquer time, we try. We try so desperately to conquer time. But we are also aware that there are appointed times for certain activities, especially religious traditions. So what does it mean when we move an observance from its appointed time to a more convenient time? I remember the first instance someone told me that they were postponing their Seder for 2 weeks until family members could be there. Now, I completely understand the desire to do this. Most of our holidays are also family or friend gatherings. We want to enjoy the festivities with people we love. And we also know that Passover begins on a specific day. When we move our observance of holiday celebrations, we may be engaging in rituals, but we also lose the connectedness we experience with world Jewry. We lose a major aspect of the ritual. A shared calendar helps define culture. In fact, the very first commandment given to the Israelites is in reference to our calendar. In Exodus, God speaks to Moses and Aaron, telling them that this month shall mark for you the beginning of the months. It shall be the first of the months of the year for you. And in particular for the Jewish people, a shared calendar has been paramount to our survival. For 2,000 years, we have lived dispersed throughout the world. We've lacked shared space. It is only in shared time that we have come together. In his book, The Jewish Experience of Time, Philosophical Dimensions of the Jewish Holy Days, Israeli professor Eliezer Shved, Zichronam Livracha, writes, by strictly maintaining the same order of time, Jews and communities that were dispersed throughout the world could live events in common, investing them with the same meanings by using the same symbols. As a result, the course of time broadened to fill, insofar as possible, the role of the missing spatial dimension. For us, time is more than passing moments. The intricacies of our calendar are better discussed in a classroom than in a sermon. It's not like our Gregorian calendar, which functions as a solar calendar, or the Islamic calendar, which functions as a lunar calendar. The Hebrew calendar has aspects of both. And in his book, Shved argues that these two aspects imply a certain historical, linear directionality. Passover is shaped by this idea. And a more cosmic, cyclical aspect to our calendar, Rosh Hashanah, is shaped by this idea. And of course, all our various holidays fall on one or the other organizational principle, the historical and the cosmic. Here we are today, celebrating the beginning of the new year, from which we count from the creation of the first human being, 5,783 years ago, whereas the Gregorian calendar thrusted upon us counts from the birth of the Christian Messiah. The Islamic calendar counts from Muhammad's journey from Mecca to Medina. Shved notes another orientation of time in his book. The biological principle determines a course for individuals as they develop and change, and marks communal times in the tempo of the generations. How we grow and change, the moments we mark in our personal lives, births, deaths, marriages, the age of maturity, these too are part of our communal calendar. It means that when adult Jews discuss when their bar mitzvah was, they might ask each other, "What parashah did you have?" Because our life cycles are connected to the Jewish cycle of the world. It's why if you've been to a wedding I've officiated or a funeral I've conducted, I always connect the moment or the person to the parsha or an upcoming holiday. For us, the calendar is sacred. Time is sacred, and our relationship to time shapes our lives. Our understanding of time is also cultural. We Jews know what it feels like to live in a calendar that is not our own. We know what it is like to have certain holidays celebrated as American holidays, even though they are most definitely Christian holidays, and what it is to have our holidays ignored. For instance, this year, Michigan public schools have Student Count Day on Yom Kippur. We know that even though it has become the academic standard to refer to the years as BCE and CE, before Common Era and Common Era, that Common Era is defined by the birth of Jesus. As Jews, we live as strangers, outsiders in a Gregorian calendar that takes no account of us. And so especially I worry about each of us creating our own Jewish calendars to serve our needs. It might not make much of a difference in one generation, maybe even two, but eventually our efforts to make the calendar fit our needs rather than observing sacred occasions on their appointed days will lead to a thinning of Jewish connection and peoplehood. In his 2010 book, Equality and Tradition, philosophy professor Samuel Scheffler writes about the force tradition plays in human life. That traditions shape our understanding of events that happened in the past and events that will or might happen in the future, even after our deaths. He acknowledges that our attitudes toward the past and future are complex, puzzling, and poorly understood. And his interest in understanding traditions may help us understand our attitudes towards them. Scheffler writes, "One may recognize the value of a tradition without valuing it oneself. But the situation is different for people who do value the tradition. For them, the fact that the tradition calls for some act to be performed may well be seen as a reason for performing it. Indeed, this may be part of what valuing the tradition consists of, just being here. We are here on this day because that is what our tradition calls us to do. It has inherent meaning." One of Scheffler's most meaningful observations is concerning the idea of home. That we create homes, physical spaces, a place to which we normally both have a claim to return and the capacity to return. It is a place where we feel that we belong and where others treat us as belonging. By establishing a home, we ward off feelings of being lost or adrift in the world. Now here, I think, is the most interesting part. Scheffler claims we are homeless in time. Traditions, he says, become a home in time. They are moments that we establish that give us grounding, that we can return to and have claim over. And when it comes to religious tradition, they connect us deeply because we share this home in time together. This is happening right now. We here together and with World Jewry are in the midst of visiting this home in time together. Consciousness of Jewish time is a celebration and affirmation of Jewish identity. When we discard the calendar, when we have the hubris to think we can control time, we leave behind the home in time that the Jewish people have built. But when we come together at the appointed time, we create a sort of temporal memory connecting us to the past and projecting us into the future. We are Moses sitting in Akiva's study. We are Akiva learning from Moses. We are time travelers right now in this very moment. Cantor Hayut and I have been discussing how we can more deeply tie our communal practice to the cycles of our calendar. And we've already started making changes. Each month, as we did this past month, we will be announcing the new moon during Shabbat services. We will be doing a better job of incorporating the music of the festival into our worship as holidays approach. Our newsletter, you may have noticed, now includes the Hebrew date at the top. But you don't need to come to temple or read your emails, please, to connect to Jewish time. Just look up at the sky at night. Notice the moon. And consider what holiday may be coming next. Celebrate the holidays on the appointed day. Give in to the calendar cycle rather than trying to control it. Acknowledge festival days even if you don't observe the entire festival. Stop even for just a few moments as Shabbat begins. Let some Shabbat peace permeate your life. Be in touch with the natural and Jewish, and sometimes naturally Jewish rhythms of the earth. Let this new year be an opportunity to come home. Come home to our shared holiday celebrations. Come home to the Hebrew calendar. Come home to the Jewish community in sync with itself. Come home to our ancient traditions that connect us to the past and to the future. Come home.